Well, I just finished filming the last Cobra video in which we repaired the quarter panel and rear bumper, resprayed them, got them looking brand new, got everything back together, and this car is basically just a buff and polish away from being 100% cosmetically perfect. And as much as we all want to see that, myself especially, I've got a dyno tune appointment in like less than 2 days, and I've got a couple things I want to take care of before we go there. And it's already late at night right now, so let's get right to work. First thing on the list, oil change. I changed the oil after like the first 5 minutes of runtime. For you guys who have been around for this build, when that lifter started tapping, or the cam lash adjuster, whatever you want to call it. So technically this will be the second oil change, but I've probably got 50 to 100 miles on the car. You know, when you build a brand new motor like this one was, typically I'd like to change oil after the first heat cycle, which I pretty much did, and then maybe 50 miles or before the dyno, which is what we're about to do. So we're not switching to synthetic yet. We're gonna do just regular Rotella, conventional oil, continue to help those rings seat, and then maybe in another 100, 200 miles, whatever, then you can switch to your regular synthetic oil of your choice. But new oil, new Motorcraft filter, got over on the shelf there. I've got to fix the exhaust that I kind of ripped off when I was getting it on the trailer to go do the paint work. Give everything a good once over, just make sure that we're as ready as we possibly can be to get to the dyno. And then I think we're ready to roll. But with all that being said, let's get the lift arms under this thing, get it up in the air, and get to work. Also, my buddy Josh was kind enough to send me a spring isolator, which if you recall from the previous, or 2 videos ago where we lowered this thing, the driver's side spring is missing the isolator. So that side's a little bit lower, and that's probably part of our issue. It's way too low, so gonna toss this thing while we're in there and hopefully bring up the ride height a little bit. All right, guys, it is the next night. I knocked out everything on my list that I wanted to. I changed the oil, new Motorcraft filter, fixed my exhaust leaks, just gave the car a good once over, took it for another test drive, took it down the road, topped it off with 93 octane. The car runs awesome. It sounds awesome. I got high hopes for the dyno tomorrow. I think it's going to go well. I always try and make the best effort I possibly can to be as prepared as I can for the dyno, just so you don't waste your own time, you don't waste the tuner's time. It sucks to get to the dyno and have a problem. So if possible, I like to put as many miles as I can on the car. Shake loose a problem if there is one. That way you can fix it at home instead of trying to fix it on the dyno, or maybe, you know, going back home and then having to go back to the dyno. That's always a possibility, but you want to do everything in your power to have that not happen. Anyways, car's loaded up. It's kind of misting rain out and pitch black, so I didn't film too much of it, but I just wanted to show you guys real quick the oil filter. So this is a brand new motor. So if you guys ever have a brand new motor, you know, new rods, new crank, you know, new bearings, everything, I don't want you to panic when you change your oil the first time and it looks like that. See all the little, very fine, it's almost like not even glitter. It's like a little milkshake almost. Milkshake is the wrong word, but basically what those are is a fine metal dust, basically, and that is totally normal. If you change your oil the first time after a brand new motor, you're gonna see a little bit of those sparkly things. What you don't wanna see is major chunks. This all looks totally fine to me for a motor, a brand new motor that has like 50 miles on it. Ideally, I probably would have even changed it a little bit sooner, but that's totally fine. This was all in the filter. The stuff that came out and drained into the pan was, you know, a little bit better, more or less the same, but that's totally normal for your first oil change in a built motor. That's why it's important to change the oil multiple times, because you don't want that stuff running through there for too long. So like I said, some of the guys change it in the first heat cycle, then after, you know, 10 miles, then 50 miles, then change it right before the dyno, then right after the dyno. You know, you get a million different answers as to how to break in a motor and, you know, how to many times to change the oil. Me personally, I like to do it for 1 or 2 heat cycles, and then usually right before the dyno, and then after the dyno we can switch to whatever oil we want. If you do your first oil change on a brand new motor and you see a little bit of that, you know, kind of milky stuff, don't panic. It's totally normal. It's just new materials, new bearings, new rods. Everything's kind of wearing together, and that's just the way it is. All right, tomorrow's the dyno, tomorrow afternoon. I think the weather is chance of rain. What else is new? But we're gonna get through it. So yeah, catch you guys in the morning. Alright guys, well the sun is out for now. I thought it was supposed to rain all day, so this is kind of a pleasant surprise, but we got some decent weather. We are on our way to the dyno. In the past I've always used performance dyno, specifically Pete does the Fords and the Cobras, just like he did my yellow Cobra last June. But Pete's kind of hard to get a hold of, especially in the wintertime. He's a big snowmobiler, so I think his schedule's kind of backed up right now. I wasn't sure when he was going to be able to get me in, so I decided to reach out to another reputable tuner in the area. He calls his company Turbo Mike Tuning. He's south and west in Massachusetts, in Charlton, Mass. He's done a bunch of these Terminators, Fords. He does LS and Chevy stuff as well, so comes with good reviews, so I think it should be fun. So we got about an hour and 20 minutes here before we get there, so let's get there, get this thing strapped on the rollers, and see what it can do, see if all this hard work is going to pay off. Let's go.
It has been about 2.5 weeks since the dyno. I've been on vacation buying the Ford Lightning. If you guys haven't seen the SVT Ford Lightning video, I'll leave it linked up here, but was busy with that for a week, got home for like 12 hours, and then had to travel for work all over the country for like a straight week. So I haven't had any time to work on the Cobra or really anything, but today it's finally the weekend. It's a decent spring day here in New England. The roads are clear, so I got the Cobra out, and just wanted to kind of go over what happened on the dyno. Keep this short, but basically I was happy with Mike from Turbo Mike Tuning. We got the car off the trailer. He immediately said, and that's what all this is going to be about, he said, "Hey, I noticed that car had a puff of blue smoke when you got it off the trailer. Is it a new motor or something?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's brand new. Just got it back in the car. I basically have, you know, some break-in miles around town on it." And he said, "Oh, okay, that's no problem. It's pretty normal," which is what I thought too. What gave me pause is I have always noticed in this car since I got it together that at cold start there's a puff of blue smoke and then it clears up. And anyone who's been around cars, that's kind of usually points towards valve seals, valve stem seals, which I didn't think that it would be, because these heads, when I bought them, were freshly rebuilt from, I can't even remember what machine shop it was. I'll have to look it up again. So I didn't even think that that was possible. Long story short, he spent like an hour writing a tune from scratch, which I really appreciate when tuners do that. They don't just grab someone else's file that's similar enough, make a couple changes, and then call it good. He took my stock 03 Cobra tune with this VIN from this car, from my SVT X4, and then started from scratch based on the mods. He did some, you know, cold idle, cold revving. You know, he spent like an hour doing that, so that was really good. We got the car on the dyno. We started, you know, just light loading. We loaded up the dyno, and it just started, you know, it was smoking. And it was like, okay, well, it's smoking a little bit. Let's check the vitals. We checked the oil. We checked the coolant temperature. We checked everything. Everything was good. So we let it cool down a little bit. We fired it up again. Tried to load up the dyno, you know, try to see if we could get those rings to snap in and seat. And the smoke just never really got any better. It was like, you know, not billowing smoke, but it was enough that it was, you know, kind of an enclosed shop. It was kind of starting to fill up the shop. So, you know, while the car was running, I pulled one of the valve cover breathers, which is where you would see blow by from like excessive ring gap or rings that weren't seated, and there was zero. Absolutely zero blow by anywhere. So, you know, that leads us to believe that there's not a problem with the rings on this car, which there shouldn't be. It's a brand new motor. So, you know, upon further inspection and discussion, we were talking about how the most smoke appears. I'll put up a clip right now. After, you know, you get in the throttle and then you let out, like a high vacuum situation in the motor. Typically indicative of a bad intake valve seal. The oil gets sucked down through the intake valve into the combustion chamber, burns, and then goes out the tailpipe. So you get on the throttle, you know, load it up a little bit, and then let off, get into heavy vacuum. And I mean, mean, I can't see anything right now, but we're outside. So like I said, it's not like it's billowing smoke. I can't even see anything right now. The car doesn't smoke at all, you know, just driving around. But under heavy load, once it's nice and hot on the dyno or like a wide open throttle situation, you know, coming back down from vacuum, that's something that we might see some oil. So Mike, the tuner, was not comfortable making a full wide open pull when it was blowing that much smoke, because oil, basically an oil mist can severely degrade the octane of the fuel, which can then lead to knock and then can lead to, you know, blowing up your motor, you know, God forbid, but it can lead to some, you know, some bad stuff. So we decided to get the tune basically perfect, you know, partial throttle everywhere that we could, and we'll go from there. Also, quick side note, I thought everyone knew this, but a bunch of people must have missed some of the earlier videos in this car. This car is a faceplated T56, meaning there's basically no synchros between the first 4 gears, so you have to slam it into gear. And it feels awesome. It's fun to drive, but probably on camera it sounds like crunchy or clunky, but that's totally normal. If you guys are not familiar with a faceplated transmission, Google it, but that's what's going on there. Anyways, we basically got the tune really close, minus wide open pulls, and then I said, all right, well, let me figure this out, and I'll take it back. And I think that I'm going to end up doing valve seals on this car, which sucks because the motor is already out, and it would have been a great time to do it right there. But obviously I didn't think that I would have to, because I thought that there was already brand new valve seals in it. But it is what it is, guys. You know, that's the way it goes sometimes. But I'm gonna try and justify it to myself, at least, by, you know, doing some upgrades while we're there. So let's get this thing back to the garage. I can show you guys what parts I'm talking about and what kind of, you know, my plan of attack is here. I'll give you guys a shot of this faceplated T56 too. We're in first there. Start going. We'll go to second. You gotta slam it in. Get on a straightaway here. You gotta shift it like you hate it. Puts hair on your chest. All right, let's get back to the garage. Man, this thing does run awesome though. I just want to gas it. Woo! All right, back to work. So you guys, look at this. Passenger side breather. I've got it capped off here. Zero, nothing. No blow by at all. Driver's side is the exact same way. Well, I can't believe I'm about to do this, but I think we're gonna pull the motor in Old Blue here. Is it possible to do valve seals with the motor in the car? Yes, it is. It has been done before. Is it worth the headache? Jury's still out on that one. I'm not sure. You guys saw on the first startup with this car that I had a problem with one of the followers and had to pull this valve cover off. And the passenger side's not so bad. It's not that easy, but it's not that bad. It's the driver's side that is a huge pain in the butt. You need to remove the master cylinder, or not the master cylinder, basically the booster, and then pull the master cylinder up over the side. You need to crawl under the dash to release it. It's a huge pain. I think it takes like, I don't know, hours to remove both valve covers. And then I risk scratching my brand new Sonic Blue paint on the valve covers. So that's at least half of it. You know, I think the book time for removing valve covers as far as Ford is concerned on these cars is like 6 or so hours by itself, and then that's not including doing 32 valve seals. So, you know, you're already in a cramped engine bay trying to get some of these back ones back here over by the booster over there, you know, using one hand to hold the tool and then get the seal in there, and just, it sounds hard enough with the motor out of the car. I really don't think I want to do it with the motor in the car. And I've decided to kind of do some while you're in there stuff, or I wanted to do it anyway, so I think it makes the most sense to do this now. And those parts are right here. A bunch of you guys have commented on this, and I agree. We did cut the springs on the front, and the ride height in the front looks pretty good, but unfortunately, the rear is still a little bit high. I'd like to level this thing out, and I think the best way to do that is going to be coilovers. So the guys over at Max Speeding Rods sent me their 99-04 coilover kit, which works with basically any 99-04 or SN95 Mustang rather, that has the solid rear axle. Normally the Cobra wouldn't come with that. Normally these wouldn't work, but someone swapped in the solid rear axle in this thing at some point, so these are going to work. So this is a complete coilover kit for this car. And as you guys saw in the spring cutting video, or have I ever done a spring install or coilover install on these cars before, you know that the A-arms need to completely drop down, which requires disassembly of a lot of it, or most of the front suspension, which is a major part in dropping the engine out the bottom. You see where I'm going with this? Also, got some other items over here. The first one being a 180-degree thermostat. This car has been running about, 206, 208, just cruising around. I'd like it to be a little bit lower. If you guys remember early on in this series, I did put a brand new OEM thermostat in this thing, which opens just around 200 degrees, which in hindsight, I wish I did a 180-degree one. So I'd like to put a new thermostat in this thing, which requires removing all of the coolant. Another major step in removing this motor. So I've also got a new PCV valve just because it was $3 on Rock Auto. Got this stuff from Rock Auto. Here's a new seal for the thermostat. And then I also got a new Bosch wideband O2 sensor because the day before the dyno, the wideband in this thing decided to crap out. So I figure to do these items here is, I don't know, 20 to 30% of removing the motor as is. Draining all your fluids, coolant especially, and then, dropping the front suspension. After that, we're basically just removing some wires, the exhaust, some random other miscellaneous stuff, the sway bar, the power steering stuff. And then this thing pretty much, raised the car off of it. I'm making it sound easy, but that's the way I'm justifying it, all right? And I'm sticking with that. So yeah, I've been pondering this for 2.5 weeks, and that's kind of where I'm at. I've had plenty of time to think about it, and as much as I don't want to because we just did it, I'm struggling. But I think removing the motor is going to be the best way to do this. So I got a million things going on, if you can already see the Camaro in the background, and I got no time to stand here and chit chat. So I'm just going to bite the bullet and get right to work. I think I'm going to get this thing up on the lift, start disconnecting stuff. Hopefully this time it's a little bit easier. If you guys remember early in this series, I thought I was going to come out the top, so I removed the supercharger, removed a whole bunch of stuff up here. But all this stuff can stay. The blower can stay. I think the whole belt drive can stay. All this is just going to get basically sucked out the bottom of the engine bay, and hopefully that saves us a bunch of time. So let's see how far we get in this first little montage, but I'm going to start getting this motor out. Let's get to work.
Well, here we go again. Next night, guys. I only had like an hour or so to work last night, and I only have an hour or so to work tonight. I just about got to get wrapped up here, but cruising right along. This is going a lot smoother than the first time. Didn't really want to be doing this a second time, but last time, if you guys remember, I pulled the blower because I was going to try and get the motor out the top. This time I'm leaving everything attached, just going right out the bottom. And I've made quite a bit of progress, and we're actually pretty close to hopefully dropping this thing out. Up top here, and I guess down bottom, coolant for the engine has been drained, coolant for the intercooler system has been drained, batteries out, all of our main harness connections over here have been disconnected. I got the power steering reservoir loose. The entire supercharger pulley bridge is off so that I can remove the inner belt, which is out, so that I can remove the AC compressor and kind of flip it up to the side here so that we don't have to discharge the AC. I still need to remove the power steering pump down here just so that that system can kind of stay in the car. Fuel lines are done. All the main harness connections are done and loose. Just still got to do the clutch cable underneath there. On the underside, I've obviously got the front wheels off, got the X pipe off. Love V-bands, make exhaust, taking the exhaust off 5 seconds or less. Drive shaft is off. So what's next? What we got to do is drop down the shocks so the A-arms can kind of drop down and the whole assembly can drop out, which is part of the coilover install. So kind of knocking that out at the same time. That will allow the whole K-member to drop. Like I said, power steering pump still have to do. Need to undo a couple connections. I think my wideband is down there, even though that sensor's dead. We're going to be replacing that. Oh yeah, steering rack has got to be pulled out and then just kind of zip tied to the radiator support. Other than that, I think this thing is basically ready to go down. I'm not going to have time to do it tonight. Unfortunately, I got something I got to do. But tomorrow night, should be able to get in here, finish up those last few things, and hopefully drop this thing out the bottom so that we can have very easy access to it. If you guys have the means, I've done this twice now, dropping it out the bottom is kind of a no-brainer. Engine and transmission right at the bottom, get it on jack, slide it out. I've probably got 2 hours invested in this thing. To be safe, we'll call it another hour just to get the rest done before we can lift this thing off and then the motor's out. So, all right, that being said, I might work for another few minutes tonight and then catch you guys tomorrow. Hopefully this thing is out again, and we can get to work. Oh yeah, at the start of this whole montage, I started by pulling the passenger valve cover just because that's the easier one. And in order to get it off, you also have to do the heater hose connections back here, which is part of pulling the motor anyways. But I wanted to just kind of see if I could see the valve seals. And I can't really tell if they're old or if they're bad or whatever. There's just not a lot of visibility down there. So didn't really see anything there. I did scope this cylinder. Actually, I think I scoped these too. And there's a little bit of oil that's pooled on the cylinder, or I'm sorry, on the piston, which also points towards valve seals. Basically, you shut the motor off hot, the oil's nice and thin, it's kind of sitting up there on top of the valve, and it leaks past the valve seal into the combustion chamber and then kind of sits on the piston. And then, once it's leaked there and it's gone, it just sits there on the piston. Then you start the car, it fires up, it burns that oil, and you get that puff of blue smoke out the exhaust, and then it clears up, as it burns out. So I'm really hoping that valve seals is all that this is. I also think in the B-roll footage there, I did a compression test, 210 PSI per cylinder. So we know we don't have a ring problem. Motor is super healthy, between 205 and 210 PSI across the board. So we've got a very healthy motor here, but it just burns a little oil. So fingers crossed it's just valve seals and we can knock this out and pop this thing back in. But that's a little down the road. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Hopefully get this thing out. Alrighty guys, it is actually Sunday morning right now. Just didn't have time to work on the car Friday or Saturday. But yeah, Sunday we are basically ready to drop this thing out as far as I know. AC compressors flipped up out of the way, power steering reservoir is all unhooked. Got the power steering pulley and pump off this morning. Got my wiring ready to drop down. All this stuff can stay. I already told you guys, got all the fuel lines, electrical connections. Got the steering rack zip tied up to the radiator support. Brake calipers are zip tied up. A-arms are drooped. Same thing over here. I think we are ready to go. I've got my jack under the transmission. Got the ATV jack under the K-member. So if I remember right, we got two big bolts right here, one right there, and then the same thing on the other side, and then obviously the 4 transmission cross-member bolts. And then we should be able to hit the button and raise this thing off of the motor and out of the car. So let's double check everything, go slow, undo those bolts, and get this motor out again. Oh, shoot. Oh, man. Forgot the shifter in the car. Whoops. Wowza. The ultimate short shifter. Okay, take 2. Shifter is now out. Or is this take 3? Because I've already done this twice now. Pulled this motor. All right, anyways, let's get the motor out. What the heck? Is the header scraping on the frame? I think that happened last time. Oh yeah. She'll self-clearance. Gotta keep an eye on that hood. Going up. What's creaking over here? Just wiring. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I feel like we've been here before, but it's done. Boom, she's out. Overall, not too bad. Probably about 45 minutes of work this morning to get to this point right here. So I figure an hour, probably 2 hours during, maybe 2.5 hours during the week, just kind of after work. So total time to remove this motor, I don't know, we'll be generous and call it 3.5 hours. And I was just taking my time. Once you stop working, it takes a while for you to get kind of back into it. So really taking these things out the bottom, really not too bad, especially when you've done it once already. And I think it's worth it. Like I said, I think we would have fought to get both valve covers off for at least a couple hours, and then just trying to maneuver that tool, which I had to special order to do the valve springs, or remove the valve springs to get to the seals. Near impossible in the car. I've heard horror stories of guys that fight with 1 out of the 32 seals for like 1 hour and then just decided to give up and pull the motor. She should have done probably in the first place. So now we got easy access to swap in my coilovers. You know, coolant is all drained, so I can put in my 180-degree thermostat. Now we got all this room to work with. This valve cover would be the nightmare one. It's gonna easily pop off with just the, you know, 10 bolts here or whatever that hold it on. Tons of access. I'm hoping I can set up kind of a bench here. I'm just gonna leave everything like this and hopefully do all 32 of these valve seals. I'm really, really interested to see how they look. My hope is that they look different from the brand new ones that I'm about to put in. Either the ones that are in the heads right now are old, or they're torn, or they're not the right size or something. Worst case scenario is we take the valve seals out and they look brand new and they're the same brand and same size and everything, and you know, then we're looking at something else. But I got high hopes. I'm hoping that we'll get the 32 valve seals in this thing. It won't smoke anymore, and we will have a perfect running 2003 Cobra here. But that's gonna be in the next video, which I'm probably gonna get started filming right about now, actually. But I think this one's long enough. We went to the dyno, had some positives, that the car runs good, it sounds good. Some negatives, it smokes. And you know, we couldn't really make a wide open pull, but I think we're well on our way to not only fixing it, hopefully, but also doing some suspension upgrades and cooling upgrades while we're at it. So thank you guys as always for watching. The next video will be up before you know it. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot to me if you guys are watching and you're not subscribed, to get those subscriber numbers up. Maybe someday we'll get to 100K. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.